Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Cosmic Current. I'm Helane Lipson, and I'm here with my co-host, CJ Miller, and we are teaming up to bring you news, opinion, and wisdom from the latest waves of information entering our collective consciousness at this time. Hello, CJ.
Hi, Helane. How are you?
Oh, so good. It's great to be here doing this show with you today. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm really happy to be here. It's been a beautiful day here in upstate New York, and I'm just so excited about the person we have with us today, Nora Herold.
I am too. It is quite a thrill. I mean, for me too, because we're going to be talking about the Pleadian message. It's great to have Nora Herold, who channels the Pleadian message. And, you know, so many of our listeners may not realize that you and I go back quite a long way. You know, CJ, I call her Claudia, and I have been college roommates and best friends since 1985, and we've been on this spiritual path together. And talking about what we're talking about at this show, the Pleadian message, it was back in 2009. I was working a horrible 3D job. I was working 9 hours a day in a cubicle under fluorescent lights, and I was so depressed at work there, and there was no internet connection. And what CJ used to do for me, she used to call me at my work number, and then she would put the phone to her computer, and she would play the entire 3-hour audio of Bringers of the Dawn for me to raise my vibrational frequency. Now, that's a friend. That was wonderful.
Yeah, well, what a great, I mean, that was literally a very transformative book for both of us. And I'm so thankful for having been open to that in the Pleadian message. What a great thing.
We still listen to this on a regular basis, and it's just a gift and an honor to bring our guest on today, Nora Herold, because we're going to be asking a little bit about Bringers of the Dawn, a book that she's intimately familiar with as well. And I want to just tell you a little bit about Nora. In 1997, Nora began working as a channel and a healer full-time, and she loves to be able to help others experience the unconditional love that's available to them from their guides. In 2007, she began to access information specific to the integration of the fifth dimensional identity and the reascension process, and has incorporated that information into her work. Nora offers private sessions, teaches, lectures, is a Reiki master, and has clients from all over the world. For more information about Nora, you can visit her website, www.noraherold.com. She's here right now with us today, so I'd like to introduce you to Nora Herold. Hello, Nora.
Hi, Helene. Hi, CJ.
Hi, Nora.
Hi, everybody listening. I know you can't all say hello back. We can't physically hear you, but I am definitely receiving all your telepathic responses. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us tonight.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. I've been so excited about this show. And I want to start off by asking you to clarify for our listeners, who are the Pleadians?
Who are the Pleadians? Well, that's a great question. You know, and I actually have worked with now a number of different versions of the Pleadians themselves. I have encountered 4th-dimensional Pleadians. I've encountered 9th-dimensional Pleadians, and I've encountered 12th-dimensional Pleadians. So I, for a number of years, channeled specifically the 9th-dimensional Pleiadian Collective. And a lot of my audio recordings and a lot of my work over the last few years came directly from the 9th-dimensional Pleiadian Collective, which are a group of approximately 2,500 beings of light who align themselves with the star Alcyon in the Pleiades star system and are transmitting to us from what we would perceive to be a future moment in time. But let me just continue this piece. I know this is a mouthful, but I kind of want to give the bigger explanation. About a year ago, I became aware of the presence of a new collective, or at least new to me in the moment, linking up with me. And they just kind of said to me, we're going to hang in the background and work with you in this way, and don't think too much about us, and when the time is right, we'll step forward. And that happened this year once we transcended the gateway on December 21st of 2012. This Pleiadian Collective began to speak directly through me, and I know them to be a 12th dimensional version of the Pleiadian energy.
So that's how you first connected with the Pleiadians?
My first connection with the Pleiadians happened in 1996. I had begun channeling at that point, consciously channeling at that point, became aware that was what I had actually been doing for much of my lifetime, but I became very clear about that. I made an intention to connect with the spirit guide, and very soon after I made those connections with my guide and a couple of other beings, my maternal grandmother, who had died long before I was ever born, she was one of the first beings I connected with. I met Wendy Kennedy, who I was friends with back in Chicago back then, and she introduced me to Barbara Marciniak's book, Bringers of the Dawn. She had already made contact with the Pleiadians herself, and, as soon as I began reading Bringers, I immediately felt that link up myself as a channel and began working with them that way as well. So, Barbara Marciniak's work, as you spoke about yourself, Helane and CJ, her transmissions, her Pleiadian transmissions was incredibly important for me as well, because I came across that right as I was opening up and awakening, and as many have expressed, when I connected with the Pleiadians through her work, I felt as if I was coming home to myself, home to another world. I had a much better understanding suddenly of so much about myself and my life.
Wow, that is so great to hear. And, Bringers of the Dawn, as we already said, is just, for me, I felt that same feeling, like it was something that I was not hearing for the first time, but it was like a remembering. So that's really interesting to hear from your position as a channel, that it also reawakens something in you. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Bringers of the Dawn, some specific things with you. In Bringers of the Dawn, the Pleadians speak of a 20-year advanced course in evolution. And as Bringers was written in 1992, I believe, it would seem that we're just now about 20 years into the future and well into this advanced course of consciousness. Many way-showers even talk about this speeding up of evolution in the recent past, like the past 2 to 3 years. So what does this say about where we're at now, and where do you see us heading in the next 20 years?
Do you mind if I bring the Pleadians through at this point, because I prefer to just let them handle?
Oh, yes.
We would love it.
Yeah. Okay. So,
that would be great.
Give me a second here to just make a slight adjustment. So I'll just explain my process a bit for anyone who hasn't heard me channel before. I'm a very conscious channel, so Norah stays very physically present in the experience. It's like I simply step to the back of my body and allow these other beings to come to the front of my body or the front of my consciousness. All right, hold on a second. I'll get to the back of the room. Greetings. This is the Pleiadian Collective, and we want to say how wonderful it is to have this opportunity to link up with all of you beautiful universal beings of light and love. So we'll comment on that piece of information that you're asking about there, CJ, that 20-year course. And it's interesting to hear you all interpreting it that way, because it was really intended to be simply a period of time where you all would remember your origins. So what you all experience often as work, or what seems to be work to all of you, from our perspective, is really just all of you remembering your true identity, your identities as high vibrational universal beings of light and love. And the more you remember that identity, the more you hold your consciousness in every moment in that place, hold your identity in that place, the more access you grant yourself in the moment. You know, we often see that one of the things you all do is you play the hierarchical game with beings like us. You sometimes, and we're speaking to everyone listening right now, not to you, CJ, and you, Helane, but we want to make sure to be clear on this piece, because you use numbers there in the third dimension to help you understand your reality, and you assign a number to us, or we've assigned a number to ourselves as the 12th dimensional Pleiadian Collective right away, because you're in the third, fourth, fifth dimension. You immediately assume, oh, they're better, they're higher, they know more, they're more advanced. All right. From our perspective, we are not any more advanced than you. We are simply having a different experience than you are. We are all the same, all of us in this universe. We are all universal beings of light and love. We are all comprised of love, and we all began our cycle of incarnations in the exact same space, in that 13th dimensional space of complete connection with source energy. So that 20-year cycle you just took yourselves through was a period of time where you all gave yourselves permission, or many of you at least gave yourselves permission to remember this piece, that there is no higher or lower. There is just experience, and every experience leads to understanding, leads to expansion, but leads to other experiences as well.
Yeah, that's, it's hard for me to actually sometimes break out of the 3D in terms of, we do use years to describe what we've been through, but
yes,
Helane, what do you...
completely fine and understandable, because that's the game that you're playing, and it is just a game. That's one of the things we like to remind you all of. This is, on some level, just a big game, like Monopoly or Chutes and Ladders or any of the other games. We'll pull out of Nora's consciousness there. Any of the other games you all play on your planet. And as you invest in those games very often when you're playing them, you become very invested in the games that you play. You've become very invested in this game as well, so invested that you've taken it on as reality, and you've forgotten that it's just a game. So the more you can remind yourselves in those moments when you feel really entrenched in the third dimensional makeup of reality, oh, this is just a game. Time, it's just a game, just an illusion. Well, the more that allows you to relax and lighten up and enjoy the game. Then, as you relax, lighten up, and enjoy the game, well, that allows you to transform and transcend all of the trauma you're walking around with, because you've believed for so long, so many lifetimes, that this game is real. And as you transcend all of that trauma, that then allows you to integrate more fully your fifth dimensional identity, which opens you up to the fifth dimensional game. And that's where you're at right now. That's the cycle you're moving into now. You're moving out of the third dimensional game and into the fifth dimensional game.
Yeah, well, I feel that too. Over the past 20 years, I feel collectively we've expanded. I feel personally that my vision of life itself has evolved greatly. I want to talk about this evolution. I want to talk about it in terms of human DNA, and this was also in Bringers of the Dawn. And in the book, the Pleadians speak at length on how our human DNA was limited by some of the original creator gods in order to limit our consciousness. It's almost like I feel like there's a battle for our consciousness presently going on. But I want to ask specifically, now we're supposedly evolving toward changing the DNA from a 2-stranded double helix into a more expansive 12-helix DNA. So where do you see the human race is now in terms of this genetic restructuring?
Well, you have all of the material still in your bodies, all right? So that's something that's very important for you to understand. You're not constructing new strands of DNA. The original 12 strands of DNA, which you were created with, are still there. They were just unplugged, so to speak, and then 2 were plugged back in and twisted together, all right? And we don't want you to get too caught up in interpreting all of it this way, because 20 years ago when we gave that information, it was appropriate at the time. It helped you all understand yourselves and reality, and we wanted you to remember back then that you were more than you were believing yourselves to be. So we were giving specifics back then and creating somewhat of a roadmap. But to be honest with you all, so much has transpired over the last 20 years. You know, you've taken yourselves in such a specific direction now in your evolution, and so many other beings have come forward to interact with all of you that a lot of the information we gave you 20 years ago, although still relevant in a lot of ways today, is not as specifically relevant as it was back then. You understand?
Based on that question I also asked, I want to hear about your opinion. I mentioned that it seems like there's a battle for our consciousness. Maybe could you elaborate a little bit on that as well?
Well, what you're feeling there, Helane, is not just what's happening on planet Earth. It's a bigger story that's been unfolding in this universe for quite some time. This universe was created as a universe of polarity, all right? It was created to be both light and dark, and there was an equitable distribution of that light and dark energy for a very long time in this universe, and it was exciting for all of you to incarnate into this universe and experience the polarity, experience light and dark. And then during the time of the Orion Wars, and that's something we've begun to really talk with you all about just in the last year or so, really just in the last 6 months specifically. During the time of the Orion Wars, that distribution of light and dark shifted, and this universe became much darker because of the warlike behavior that all beings were enacting, all beings. So we want you all, every single one of you who are listening right now, tuning in to this information, to own this piece of your history. We don't want you to see that you're being attacked by an outside force. And that's sometimes what we hear in all of you when you say things like battle for your consciousness. It feels to you as if you're battling some being or some collective or some energy outside of you. No. You've been battling yourselves. So during that period of time, during the Orion Wars, a call was put out to bring in more light to this universe. And at that point, a lot of other beings, a lot of other energies and energetic signatures from other universes came in with their light to help amp the light that seemed to be diminishing in this universe. And at this point in time now, you've taken this universe back to that 50-50 split of light and dark. In fact, from our perspective now, as we're viewing all of you, you've taken it even a bit further. We'd say you're more at 55 light, 45 dark, even 60 light, 60% light, 40% dark. Ultimately, your intention here, all of you, is to take this universe to a distribution of light and dark where you're playing out 75% light and 25% dark. So we don't want you to perceive it as a fight or as a battle, because a battle is going to plug you back into that warlike behavior, and it's going to trigger more of a polarized reality. We want you all to really begin operating more from a place of unconditional love and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. I mean, that's a really good point, and to remind us all to come more into the place of the heart instead of the head.
Yes,
the mind.
We often see when you look at those that you call the powers that be on your world, the Illuminati, secret government, whatever you want to call them, the reptilian energy, as soon as you even do that, as soon as you say, the powers that be, you disenfranchise yourself. You make yourself powerless because you've said there's another being outside of me that's more powerful than I am. So it's so important for you all to really remember that everything outside of you is simply a reflection of your own light. And the more you can see those that are wearing the dark costumes as simply beings of love, wearing a dark costume, the easier it's going to be for you to transcend what it is you're moving through right now and give yourselves more access. Remember that you are sovereign and begin operating and creating a reality that shows you are a sovereign being of light.
Wow.
It's not about fighting that energy outside of you. What we really all encourage all of you to do now is create the lives you want for yourselves right now, in this moment. Really be brave enough, all of you, to create the life you want. And a lot of you will say, all right, I've already started doing that. And some of you will say, well, I can't do that. I still got to get up every morning and go to a job and feel like a slave. And we want to say to you, yes, you can do that right now. That doesn't mean you have to radically pull the plug on the version of reality you're operating in, but it does mean within the context of your current reality, you can begin to inject more light. You can begin to operate as more of a sovereign being. And one of the best ways for you all to do that right now is start using your voices. Using your voices in every moment, allowing your voices to be vehicles of love and truth in every moment, especially within those contexts of a situation that you might choose to term as dark or an enslavement scenario. Start to let your light through your throat chakras, and suddenly you will either transform the situation around yourself or you will create something else for yourself in another environment.
Mm-hmm. That makes me think of, Helane, that one of the questions that we were going to ask about trying to maintain a high frequency when you're amidst people of a lower frequency, because what you were just saying, Norah, made me think of even people in our own family can feel dark to some of us or very difficult to maintain a high frequency around. So is that the way we should do it, is to imagine them as beings of light, or what can you say about that?
This is Calliandra. Greetings. I'm Calliandra.
Hello.
Terry.
Hi.
I'm going to come in and play with you all right now around this topic. So, yes, there are many ways you can, there are many, many techniques you can employ to hold your vibration, especially in situations where you find yourself surrounded by what appears to be a lower vibration. It's a very challenging piece for those of you that feel you're empathic. By empathic, we mean you feel other people's feelings and you feel the emotions around you as if they are your own. And then you have a hard time differentiating between what it is you're actually feeling about your life and your world and what everyone else is feeling. It's very hard for a lot of you who are empathic, and there are a lot of empathics who have awakened, because the empathics are ultra-sensitive. And the ultrasensitives, of course, were the first to awaken en masse because your sensitivity was telling you there was a lot more to reality than meets the eye. Okay, so the first recommendation we will make in helping you all hold your vibration is to use humor, to give yourself permission literally to lighten up, to see everything around you on some level as funny. Okay, now, we want to be clear. Yes, there's a lot that's happening in your reality right now that looks very dark. There are a lot of people experiencing tremendous amount of pain and suffering, and we do not mean in any way to make fun of their situation. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying look at yourselves. Look at the dramas you create out of your own fear and your own darkness and begin to see the comedy in those moments. You can all do it. You've all done it in the past. You all have found yourselves having created terribly dark situations for yourself, and then at some point in the moment of the creation, realizing the hilarity of the situation. And as you realize the hilarity of it, you suddenly give yourself your power back because you lighten up. You remember it's your creation in the first place. So that's one way of maintaining your vibration. Another way of holding your vibration is to just use your breath. So if you find yourself surrounded by others who are spewing negativity, on the inhalation of breath, feel yourself receiving a transmission of light and love, and on the exhalation, feel yourself simply breathing that light and love through your body and into the surrounding consciousness. That will either alter the conversation going on around you or create the opportunity for you to physically get up and leave the conversation. You know, one of the things we don't want you all to do is beat your heads against the walls trying to convince those around you, especially those in your biological family, that your version of reality is the ultimate truth if they are not ready to hear that truth. All that's going to do is cause you all to become exhausted and lower your vibration. Greetings, this is the Pleadians. We'll come in here as well. There are a lot of other things you can do to hold your vibration. You can remember to hold in your own consciousness images that bring you joy. You can sing. You can dance. You can express your creative energy. You can be playful like a child, even in the moment of darkness. And this is what so many of you came in to do, you as systems busters. We know that term was used in Bringers of the Dawn. You know, the systems busters, you are all excellent at incarnating into dysfunctional systems and then highlighting the dysfunction. That's your job, to highlight the dysfunction, not to fix it, not to try to fix anything outside of you, anything that appears dysfunctional in anyone else. The only one we want you focusing on right now as far as working on altering your consciousness is yourself, each one of you.
Mm-hmm. That was so wow. I love hearing Calliandra speak too, and thank you, Pleadians, for your message. You know, Calliandra started off talking about being empathic, and makes me think about Barbara Marciniak talking about human beings coming together and jointly becoming a telepathic receptacle for energies coming from all over the cosmos. And actually I do. I work as a psychic astrologer, and I'm constantly receiving downloads of information. So it's said that this is what will greatly change the face of the universe. I'd like to hear more about these downloads and your take on the idea of the telepathic receptacle and all of us picking up on this and changing the face of the universe.
Yes, this is the Pleadians here to respond to that, Helane. So many of you are stationed in very specific places around the globe to act as these conduits of energy, and that's how we see you. And, you know, all of you who have awakened, you all feel the sense of urgency. You all feel as if you are here on a mission, here to do something incredibly important. So there are two things you are doing from our perspective to fulfill this mission, and you're doing them automatically. One is your own internal shift, your own integration experience, meaning awakening, remembering that you are a universal being of love and light, accessing your higher self and allowing the energies of your higher self to fully embody your physical vehicle. That's number one, and that's the most important thing any of you will do in this incarnation. We don't care how much you shout to the rooftops. That is the most important thing you will do in this incarnation, is your own integration experience. The second piece then is, yes, what you're speaking about there, Helane, acting as a conduit for universal love, light, and information. The downloads come to you in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different manners as well. There are collective downloads, and then there are personal downloads. The collective downloads often happen in conjunction with dates that you have deemed to be important on your planet, like the solstices, the equinoxes, the eclipse, those kinds of experiences. So what are the downloads themselves? So they are packets of light-encoded information that are sent to you by collectives of beings like us, as well as those beings that you refer to as your celestial bodies, the planets, the star systems. Remember that those are all collective beings, as Earth itself is a collective being. Earth is a number of beings holding their consciousness together, creating the planet Earth, all right? So as each one of you, well, at this point, each one of you is beginning to really understand yourself as a collective as well, because you've got your ego consciousness, and then you've also got the consciousness of your higher self working through you, and there's not just one consciousness behind the wheel of your bodies any longer. This is a collective and collaborative experience for each of you. So for all of you who are aware that you are operating, and some of you are not aware even yet that you've been doing this, but you are all doing this. Those of you who have awakened especially are doing this. But there are many more that we would call sleeper agents, so to speak, who are very unaware that they're acting as these conduits of information and energy. So it runs through the body. It enters through the crown chakra and the heart chakra, and more so now even the heart chakra. Your heart chakra is now your universal connector, and this is one of the big shifts that's occurred over the last few years. You're no longer using your seventh chakra, your crown chakra, to link you up to the universe. You're using your heart center as your link up to your universal connections, and your own personal emotional center has now dropped to the second chakra. So we're getting off track here a bit, but we wanted to just sneak that piece in because that does dovetail with that question you were asking about, CJ, there with regards to the plugging back in of the strands of DNA. So your energy centers in your body are shifting as a byproduct of that DNA shift, and that DNA shift is underway. We want to be clear on that, even though we don't see it as really an essential piece of information at this time, and it's often something you can use to distract yourselves with. We'll see you often saying, how many strands of DNA have I plugged in? And as soon as you do that, you go to this really competitive place with yourselves, and we don't want you to do that. We want you all to know that you're doing wonderfully well, and from our perspective, the light you are all holding on your planet right now as compared to 20 years ago has magnified 1,000-fold, maybe even more than that. It's hard for us to quantify it. It's hard for us to put a number on the amping of your light. You know, and Well, we know that you've got the words critical mass in your consciousness. That's a question we often hear in all of you. When is critical mass going to be achieved? So by critical mass, what we mean by that is a certain segment of the population needs to awaken their consciousness and begin to take on a new understanding of reality. And when a certain number of people achieve that awakening experience, then very quickly afterwards the rest of humanity will shift along as well. Critical mass was achieved many years ago already from our perspective. So you are well on your way now, and it's partly why your shift is accelerating, and it is accelerating. It's hard for you all to see that sometimes because it's not yet portrayed by your media. You don't have news stories talking about the shift. You have news stories instead still perpetrating the fear and the darkness. But in your day-to-day lives, most of you can very clearly see and feel the shift is accelerating. You are accelerating collectively.
Oh, yeah. That makes me think about the idea of when you talk about the media just sort of making people fearful. I've heard it said, even in the Bringers of the Dawn, that chaos and confusion must come to break down the system so that it can be rebuilt with light. So it certainly seems like we're experiencing, a lot of the collective is experiencing chaos and confusion right now.
Yes, and we would actually say what they're experiencing is simply an awareness of what has always been there. None of this is new. Nothing that's happening right now as far as people being blown up or killed or lies or cheating, none of that is new. That's been happening for eons in your reality. What's new is you all know it now. You can all look at it. What's even newer is you're all being brave enough to own your own part of it, each of you. You're all being brave enough to say, look at that cheater outside of me. I see. They're reflecting back my own cheater, the version of me that feels they need to cheat to be able to survive. And as you really get there and then send transmissions of unconditional love to the aspects of yourself that feel that desperate and that traumatized that they needed to lie, cheat, steal, and kill to survive, that's when you really find your physical reality shifting. That's the other thing we'll say. Trauma is always what is underlying those kinds of actions and behaviors. So you look at any villain up there, the biggest, baddest, meanest villain, underneath you've got a traumatized child or baby extraterrestrial.
So CJ, that was an excellent question, by the way. I mean,
thanks.
So Nora, where do you see us now, like human beings on Earth now, in terms of our place in global society? Where are we at?
This is the Pleadians here. Where you're at is you are at the helm of the shift. This is one of the things that you have a hard time really understanding because you feel so separate, so isolated out. You feel disenfranchised and you feel as if you are waiting to be welcomed back into the galactic community at large. The truth is, we're all watching you, learning from you. The universal ramifications of what you're doing are really beginning to be felt now. Big changes have occurred on many timelines of what you would call your history. You are in the process of rewriting this universal history. That's your place right now as far as the galactic community is concerned. And the only way you can do this is by pretending to be separate and isolated and alone there. If you were able to fully engage with the galactic community in the way that you all desire to, all right? So if you had disclosure and other beings landed, well, that would take you in a completely different direction. And you would forget the work you really came here to do. And one of the pieces of the work that you're here to do, other than integrating your higher selves through these physical vehicles, is to resolve a lot of these galactic conflicts that have occurred over billions of years across this universe. So one of the reasons why Earth was seeded by so many different beings from different star systems was because the idea was you would all grow up together here on this planet, resolve your interpersonal conflicts with each other, transmit that information back to your home worlds telepathically. And this is part of an answer to that question you asked earlier, CJ, about, or Helane, about the downloads. You're not just receiving information, you are also transmitting. All right, so every action you take, every resolution to every issue you experience, you transmit that information back to your home worlds, and those bigger conflicts are resolving across the galaxies. Okay, this is Norah. Did that fully answer that question, Helane? Because I also felt like you were asking something else there about humanity and Earth itself. Hi, everybody.
I was
just
thinking
wanted to say hi.
Hi. Actually, Norah, that is. I was thinking about that. This as humanity, as how we are. That is true. That is exactly what I was thinking, actually.
Humanity, how our place here on the planet, correct, with each other.
Yes.
Our place with each other now is to forge deeper connections, to be more loving with each other. This is Norah. I can easily answer that question. To come more from a place of unconditional love and truth, and to speak our truths without engaging in conflict. Now, this is the Pleadians here. Conflict at times is still unavoidable because when you run into a traumatized aspect of yourself that you haven't healed, that version of you is going to want to engage in conflict at times or want to have a fight to be able to access the anger and the rage it's holding so you can clear. So at times, yes, you'll still engage in conflict, you'll still fight. But more often than not, we're seeing a lot of you, even in the midst of your battles, suddenly seeing the humor, as Calliandra was saying earlier. Oh, this is Norah. I mean, this is sort of something that's happening in my life with my husband. He and I have been together through many, many, many incarnations. So we have, between the two of us, just boatloads of past life baggage that we're dealing with, as well as just our normal, married life in this life. And when those past life bleed-throughs used to come through, or our childhood trauma would come up for us in this life, let's say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, it would be a royal, bloody battle. I mean, because John and I are both very strong, and we're very good at using our voices and fighting. Now we're at the point where we'll start to engage on that level, and then we so very quickly shift, one of us or both of us in the moment, into that lighter place. And this is how I know my consciousness has shifted, because I no longer fight the way I used to fight. I no longer take it all as seriously. I no longer have that level of trauma that I used to walk around with.
Interesting, and I can see that. You were just saying about past lives, too. And so, Norah, I want to switch gears here a bit. I want to ask you about Lemuria, Lemurian energy, and our ancient Lemurian ancestors.
Sure. So I have a long history with Lemuria as Norah. I remembered my lifetime on Lemuria back in 1996, right after I started channeling. That was one of the byproducts of beginning to channel. I ripped my consciousness open in an instant and began to give myself immediate access to my other lifetime experiences, healing abilities. I went through an extremely dramatic change in a short amount of time, like people who have had a near-death experience. And part of that was accessing my lifetime on Lemuria that then went to Atlantis. And back then, 17 years ago, my understanding was that Lemuria was on this planet, and then we Lemuria, for some reason, was destroyed, and then we went to Atlantis. And I used to hear things about Mu, the planet Mu, and that Lemuria was actually on another planet, and that didn't make sense to me because I remembered Lemuria being on Earth. And I didn't do a lot of reading or research. Most of the information I've accessed, I've either accessed it through channeling or through my own conscious recall of my own memories. Barbara Marciniak is one of the few people that I read. And I just felt kind of guided to do that, to access information in this way as a channel. But last year, well, I would actually say in 2011, as I began to really do deep work on my own second chakra integration experience, I began to unearth some memories about Lemuria, and it completely altered my perspective. So it took me, in 1996, I remembered being on Lemuria, and I was hanging out with a couple of friends at that time, Wendy and Amy, who were in that lifetime with me. So we were having a collective experience of remembering our lifetimes then, while being friends right now and channeling at the same time. It was I was living in a completely altered consciousness for about a year and a half at that time. But in 2011, when the Lyrans showed up, I started channeling the Lyrans, and I understood them to be Lemurian as well. I suddenly began to realize that Lemuria was much more complicated than I had initially remembered, and the only reason I hadn't remembered it is because I wasn't ready to remember it. As I began to remember what I would call more of the truth of that experience, those memories triggered a lot of really painful emotions in me and in John, and we played some things out personally as a way to try to help ourselves clear what it was we were holding around that time. So my understanding is that Lemuria originally began on another planet, a planet called Earth. And that planet was destroyed during the Orion Wars. The Lemurians on that version of Earth and the Lyrans were a species that really enjoyed each other's company. And the Lyrans came and rescued many of the Lemurians off of the first Earth. And we came here, so my memories now of that lifetime began on that other planet that I witnessed being destroyed, and then we came to this planet and decided this planet was where we would set up camp, so to speak, and we furthered our work. Then we worked with the Earthlings here, and we renamed this planet Earth at that time. So this planet used to be called something else. And that's my memory of it, and that's also what the Lyrans have told me. I'll just stop for a second and see if you have questions at this point, either of you, because I could go on and on about this.
Well, I'm just, as far as Lemuria, I'm just kind of like, I'm taking it all in. I'm blown away. As I mentioned earlier in the show, CJ and I are very close, and we started to remember our Lemurian history and different bits and pieces of what we were doing there. And that was part of our waking up process. And we realized that we were even friends then, healers, and doing our own spiritual work even back then in ancient times. So when you just said that, I mean, that just was, I was really touched by your answer, so thank you.
You're welcome. If you'd like to hear from the Lyrans and the Lemurians, they are hanging out. More than welcome to come through for a moment.
Yeah.
We are Lyrans. We are Lemurians. We are your ancestors. We are your family. So we're happy to have this opportunity to speak with you about a piece of your history that's really just becoming clear to all of you. It's what we would call a hidden piece of your history, because most of you on the planet were not ready to remember that you used to inhabit another planet called Earth. The destruction of Earth, the first Earth, was devastating to all who experienced it, those who perished in that experience and those who left the planet and left those that they loved. And it left you all with the fear that you're going to destroy Earth. And that's one of the reasons why you all run this fear of destroying Earth. It's not really a fear about the future. It's a memory of something you already experienced. When we came to this planet that you now know to be Earth, the experiment was already underway, meaning this planet had already been seeded by many different extraterrestrial beings, and we inserted ourselves into that experiment because we were bringing with us a new species, a species that was not represented in the experiment, and that species was a Lyran Earthling hybrid. Although you now understand the original Earthlings to be fairy. So those beings who exist in a fifth dimension that you call fairy were originally third-dimensional Earthlings living on a planet called Earth that created a civilization called Lemuria. We came to Earth together, this version of Earth, the Lyrans, the Lemurians, and also the hybrid species we had created between our two races, the Lyran Lemurian hybrids, and we began to work with the Earthlings here and created another hybrid species, a hybridization of the Lyran, Lemurian, and Earthling energy. And in doing so, we reawakened your ET consciousness, and that began the cycle that you're in today of remembering your identity, plugging back in your DNA. So in part, we gave you all back what had been taken from you by that reptilian race that came in so long ago and dumbed you down, so to speak. But we also acted as gods ourselves. We want to be clear with that piece of information, and we all do this across the universe. We act as gods, we create, and we take away.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you just spoke about reptilians, and I'm not sure if you as the Lyrans can continue with this, but that makes me think about them in terms of their evolutionary process. And can you say anything about where the reptilians are in their evolution right now?
This is the Pleadians here. So you're asking us to put it on a linear timeline, so we'll do that for you. But we want to remind you that the reptilians, like everyone else in this universe, are 13th dimensional universal beings of love and light who are just pretending to be reptilian in this moment, as you all are just pretending to be Earthlings in this moment. From our perspective, on their arc of experiences on this particular timeline, there are many reptilians who are in the process of awakening their own emotional centers, their own centers of compassion, and are beginning to operate in a different way. And this is, by and large, partly due to your work there on Earth. This is one of the ripple effects of your shift in consciousness, as well as the Zetas going through the same experience themselves. There are many Zetas now who have accessed their emotional bodies and begun to operate as emotional beings because of their interactions with all of you.
Now, CJ and Nora, we are starting to be cutting it close on time. So, CJ, if you'd like to ask one more question, and then we'll proceed to close it up. I know time flies. It's been an amazing interview, full of information. I'm going to listen to this over and over again. I'll tell you right now.
Thank you, Helane. I mean, it really is so fascinating, and it's hard to limit the questions. But I do have one more question, and this is something that I feel must affect a lot of people, a lot of way showers who are very empathic. And I'm wondering what you can tell us about archons and the best way to protect ourselves from their feeding on our fears or other lower energies.
All right, so we don't want you to run any kind of protection. This is a bit of a change from the way you used to operate. But protection now, as fifth dimensional beings, will simply isolate you. It will cut you off from source energy. What we want you to do is be a bigger conduit of unconditional love and light. And know that as you hold your own vibration, as you hold yourself in a higher vibrational rate, all that will be in your presence will either have to shift their vibration to that higher vibrational energy themselves, or they will have to leave. So we don't want you to put yourselves in bubbles of light any longer. We don't want you to work on clearing out or kicking out energy from your space. We want you to send more and more unconditional love through, because your work here is not just the alteration of your own consciousness. That is the most important thing you will do, but it is also you operating as conduits for that unconditional love and light energy and offering that energy to any and all around you who wish to take it.
That's beautiful.
I have this image of like offering all of what we would call these lower vibrational entities pieces of unconditional love and light pie.
I like that.
Yummy love and light pie.
And I mean, Nora, just talking to you, I'm left with, and some of the entities that you channel, I'm left with such a loving, warm feeling. I am going to ask you for a closing message, but since we're talking about the Pleadians, and since the Pleadians have been channeling much of this information, I know that CJ and I have, both of us, for years felt extremely connected to the Pleadians. Are most of us, or all of us who feel connected to the Pleadians, actually Pleadian in origin?
Yes, of course. You know what? This is the Pleadians here. We'd say there are two ways of identifying with the Pleadian energy, or with any of the energies. So for those of you who are strongly connected with the Arcturans, or those of you who are strongly connected with the Sirens, the Lyrans, on and on. There are two ways you'll feel those connections. One is through your other experiences. So you're remembering lifetimes when you were Pleadian, Helane and CJ. But then the other way you feel the connection is through the genetic material you're carrying in your body. So there are Pleiadian lines on this planet. There are Lyrans. There are Siri, on and on. Again, the list is too big to enumerate. If you feel connected to a particular species, then yes, they're your family. You don't need to ask, are they my family? You're already answering that question yourself. But what we want to remind you of is they are not your ultimate family. You're remembering one particular set of experiences because that set of experiences is useful to you in this particular incarnation. The truth is all of you are everything. We in this universe are all everything. We have all been everything.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we want to leave you with today, really, is to help you remember that truth, that you are all everything, you have been everything. Then there is never anything outside of you that is outside of you. Everything then truly becomes a reflection of some aspect of your own energy, and suddenly you're simply working with another version of your own light. And then there's really nothing to be afraid of, ever, because you're just dealing with yourself again and again and again all over the place.
Brilliant.
We love
Brilliant.
you.
I love it, Nora. And I am so grateful that you came on to Cosmic Current today. I know that you have a number of events coming up. Can you tell our listeners about some of the events?
Yes, sure, definitely. I'll be hosting a workshop here in Ojai, California, which is where I live, with Wendy Kennedy, who is also a very well-known Pleiadian channel, and she channels other beings as well. Wendy and I have known each other in this life now for 17 years and have worked together professionally for the last few years, called Implementation of 5D Technologies. That's on May 11th and 12th up here in Ojai, and it's a 2-day workshop where we're going to be working on the actualization of telepathy, time travel, accessing other lifetime memories, manifestation processes, accessing instantaneous healing processes, and Wendy and I both will be channeling a lot throughout that weekend as well. So it'll be a combination of channeled information and then processes for people who are attending. You can find information on my website, which is noraherold.com. And early registration closes at midnight tonight. We had a special early registration rate, so if anybody's really interested, take a look at it, although we did price it as affordably as we could to make it available to as many as we can. And then I do a monthly teleconference. It's the first Tuesday of every month. It's about 90 minutes long. I'll channel for about a half hour, and then I take questions from many of the people who are participating until the time runs out. So the info on that can be found on my site as well. And then I'm always doing, a lecture here and there. I often do group sessions. I'll do something around the summer solstice here in Ojai.
Beautiful. Is this event that you have with Wendy Kennedy, is this going to be on live stream?
It's not going to be live streamed, but we're going to record it, and the audio will be available for purchase after the event for anyone who can't attend in person. And that's another thing. On my website, I have a ton of both free information and then also paid content. And the paid content, it's a series of lectures that I have done over the course of the last 3 years. There's a tremendous amount of information there. So for those of you listening, please go enjoy my free material, and then if you feel inspired to buy something, I express my gratitude to you. And I'm available for private sessions, of course, as well. You can book through my website.
And do you do those sessions over Skype? Oh,
sorry.
We do. It's okay. I just was wondering, do you do sessions over Skype or phone?
I'm available by Skype and phone, yes. I work primarily by Skype these days. I can record my Skype sessions. I've got clients all over the world, so Skype is, but phone as well. And also in person, if you happen to be a Southern California person, you can come see me in person.
Great.
Wow. I wish we were nearby. We're doing this show from the East Coast. Oh, Nora, we are so grateful that you joined us today.
Oh, thank you both so much. Thank you both so much for having me on. You're both really just beautiful, wonderful beings.
Thank you so much,
like I said
Nora.
Before, we love you. We love you. We love you. We love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both. I love you too, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening tonight. As always, it's so great to connect up with all of you.
Oh. So listeners that did not catch Nora Herold's website, you can find it at www.noraherold.com. I want to also thank you all for tuning into Cosmic Current tonight on In 5D Radio. Next Wednesday, May 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can tune in to my interview with Faith Spina of Bridge to Lemuria. You can see a running theme, some of my favorite topics. For more information about upcoming programs, come visit my website at www.insightsbyhelane.com. And to learn more about co-host Miller, you can check out her website at www.wholeearthhealing.com. CJ, it was another wonderful show, wasn't it?
Thank you so much for asking Nora to be on our show. What a fascinating guest. I feel so inspired and so in my heart now. So just wonderful.
Me too. Yeah, all I could just keep saying is I love you. I'm so, and it just brought. I hope that our listeners have the same feeling that we do from just hearing her speak. definitely check out her website. It's worth a look. Now, till we meet again, our show, Cosmic Current with CJ Miller, is once a month. CJ will be back again together, the two of us, and we're going to be having Anelia Benz, Franco Di Nicola, and Matthew Cosell, all on the 29th. That's the next day that we're going to be having Cosmic Current. That's going to be pretty awesome, huh?
That's going to be a great show. It's going to be kind of like a mini symphony of meditation reunion, because we first were tuned into a lot of their information in November at that event. And I am so looking forward to our next show, and so nice to be joined by all of our listeners tonight. And thank you so much again.
Yes, and remember, next Wednesday, May 8th at 8 p.m., is my interview with Faith Spina of Bridge to Lemuria. It'll be fascinating, not to miss that one. Until we meet again, remember, as soon as you accept your own divinity, you will see the true magnificence of your own presence. We're wishing you all love, light, and blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Namaste.